In the profound context of ancient Chinese philosophy, the phrase "a slight deviation can lead to a 1,000-mile error" serves as a powerful warning. It reminds us that even the smallest of missteps can lead to irreversible consequences. This is not just a surface-level lesson, it is a way of thinking about how we approach life, our attention to detail, and our awareness of the unpredictability of the future. Through this phrase, the ancients taught us the importance of the path of Shèn Wēi, the wisdom that resides in the smallest details, which holds profound significance. The phrase originates from the Han Shu, Book of Han, specifically in the section on Wang Mong. According to historical records, Wang Mong's ill-conceived reforms led to disastrous consequences. He chased after ideals that were disconnected from the complex realities around him, and through a series of minor yet critical mistakes, he brought about the fall of the dynasty. In this context, historians use the phrase "a slight deviation can lead to a 1,000-mile error" to encapsulate the mistakes made in his decision-making process. This philosophical warning not only applies to politics but also offers a deeper reflection on human nature, society, and self-cultivation for generations to come. Connected to this saying is another important concept in Chinese ancient philosophy, Shèn Wēi, which means to act with great care in the smallest of details, seeing the big picture through the small, and preventing problems before they even arise. Confucius in the Analects states, "A gentleman is cautious even when alone." This idea intertwines Shèn Wēi with Shèn Du, acting with self-restraint when alone, emphasizing that even when one is alone and unobserved, one should hold oneself to the highest standards, recognizing the immense importance of the smallest details. The ancients believed that whether in personal behavior or in governing a country, the seeds of both success and failure are often hidden in these hardly noticeable details. From this perspective, a slight deviation can lead to a 1,000-mile error serves not only as a reminder of the need for caution but also as an invitation to sharpen our powers of observation. It encourages us to recognize that even the smallest things are not insignificant. Like a seemingly inconspicuous seed, which, nourished by sunlight and rain, grows into a towering tree, so too can a small misstep, when allowed to accumulate, lead to catastrophic outcomes. Through this saying, the ancients remind us of the power of time. The choices we make in the smallest of matters can, over time, accumulate into irreversible results. In ancient Chinese philosophy, Shèn Wēi is not merely about attention to detail, it is a practice of inner cultivation. It represents personal insight into one's own actions and an understanding of the laws that govern the world. In this process, we see the perfect integration of Shèn Wēi and Shèn Du. Even when no one is watching and when one is alone, a true gentleman holds themselves to a high standard, knowing that even the slightest slackness will snowball into something much larger. The purpose of this video is to provide a deeper understanding of a slight deviation can lead to a 1,000-mile error and the true essence of the path of Shèn Wēi. This is not just ancient wisdom, it is a capability needed for modern life. In the following content, we will explore the philosophical meaning of crisis awareness and how, through reflection and cultivation, we can integrate the path of Shèn Wēi into our daily lives, taking steps toward becoming more mature and grounded versions of ourselves. So, don't close this video just yet. This content is meant for those who are eager to improve themselves. Every future advancement could stem from the insight gained right here and now. Subscribe to this channel and join us as we unlock the deeper mysteries of the path of Shèn Wēi in ancient philosophy. In the journey of life, crises often approach us in a quiet, unnoticed way. By the time they fully reveal themselves, we are often caught off guard. Yet, the wisdom of ancient philosophers has already lit a warning lamp for us, to be prepared in advance and to recognize the subtle signs of impending change. These ideas are not only strategies for handling crises but also ways to shape our interaction with the world, cultivating a keen sense of detail and a sharp foresight toward the future. In the I Ching, Book of Changes, there is a saying, "Goodness, if not accumulated, cannot achieve fame. Evil, if not accumulated, cannot bring about ruin." This phrase highlights the fact that crises often begin in subtle ways, rather than from sudden, catastrophic events. It is in the details where everything begins to shift. When we overlook small signs, the seeds of future crises are already quietly being planted. The phrase "a slight deviation can lead to a 1,000-mile error" vividly encapsulates this idea. A seemingly insignificant mistake, if left uncorrected, can expand exponentially over time and space, eventually resulting in irreparable consequences. Ancient wisdom in water management offers a striking example. In the management of the Yellow River, the ancients recognized that flood prevention was not about waiting for a large flood to arrive but about observing and repairing even the smallest cracks in the dikes. Even the tiniest crack, if ignored, could eventually lead to a catastrophic breach, as the continuous flow of water erodes it further. As it is said in the Han Feizi, disasters often accumulate in neglecting the minor, and wisdom and courage are often lost in the drowning of minor details. This is not merely a technical warning, it is a philosophical essence of crisis awareness. Small details are not just warnings, but the source of profound impacts. The value of crisis awareness far exceeds the crisis itself. It not only alerts us to potential problems but also helps us understand the underlying principles of how the world works. Lao Tzu, in the Tao Te Ching, mentions, "All great things in the world must begin with the small." This wisdom, repeatedly taught by ancient philosophers, urges us to perceive the future from the smallest of things and see the whole picture through the tiniest of details. The essence of crisis awareness is a deep insight into the development patterns of all things, a rational deduction from the details to the whole. Looking back at history, we can see that both personal achievements and the rise and fall of societies often begin with the ability to grasp the subtle changes. When Cao Cao heard the news of the grass boat borrowing arrows at the Battle of Red Cliffs, had he been more alert, the outcome of the battle might have been drastically different. Similarly, when Wang Anshi implemented reforms during the Song dynasty, if he had paid more attention to the details of each policy, perhaps the results would have been more stable. These historical events demonstrate that crisis awareness is not just about foresight, it is also a deep capacity for self-restraint. However, crisis awareness is not limited to history and philosophy, it is intimately connected to our everyday lives. From financial management to personal health, from interpersonal relationships to career development, the smallest neglect can often lead to enormous costs. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, life is like a voyage, neglecting a slight deviation in direction can ultimately lead you to an entirely wrong port. This warning echoes the philosophy of a slight deviation can lead to a 1,000-mile error. It reminds us that we must not only focus on the issues in front of us but also look ahead to the future, seeking profound impacts in the smallest of things. Therefore, crisis awareness in ancient philosophy is not just about anticipating and solving problems, it is a consistent attitude toward life. It teaches us to detect changes from the smallest of details, to perceive the whole through the faintest clues, turning crises into opportunities and risks into chances for growth. With this attitude, we can truly live in harmony with the world and stand firm in the face of every crisis. This is not only the wisdom of the ancients but also a necessary path for modern individuals to lead a steady and resilient life. In the vast realm of ancient philosophical thought, the concepts of careful attention to details and being cautious in solitude shine brightly like two guiding stars, leading individuals to seek inner discipline and self-cultivation in their daily behavior. These ideas, which stress the importance of being mindful of even the smallest things, embody the profound lesson captured in the phrase "a small error can lead to a huge disaster." Whether it's the ethical standards of Confucianism or the introspective wisdom of Taoism, ancient thinkers have always reminded us that true self-cultivation begins with the smallest details, and that genuine responsibility is never diminished by the absence of external supervision. The concept of careful attention to details first appears in Confucian classics, emphasizing a cautious attitude toward even the most trivial matters. It teaches that no matter how insignificant something may seem, it can have far-reaching consequences. For example, in the Book of Rites, it is stated, "A gentleman does not let minor actions harm his greater virtue." This statement highlights that even the smallest behavior can damage one's overall character. Therefore, careful attention to details is not just about being aware of the small things but about holding oneself to the highest standards of character and not overlooking any early signs of potential mistakes. Closely related to this is the concept of being cautious in solitude, an important idea in ancient philosophy. In the Great Learning, Mencius said, "There is nothing more hidden than what is unseen, and nothing more subtle than what is small, so a gentleman is cautious when alone." This means that it is essential to maintain inner clarity and self-discipline when no one is watching. Being cautious in solitude requires us to maintain a high level of self-control even in the most secretive situations, because our inner order ultimately determines our external actions. The idea that a small mistake can lead to a great disaster is a powerful reflection of this idea. When we ignore the need for self-restraint in small matters, we may end up straying from our ultimate goals. The value of careful attention to details and cautiousness in solitude is especially significant in the relationship between the individual and the collective. Confucianism emphasizes the principle, if you wish to establish yourself, help others to do the same. If you wish to succeed, help others to succeed. This is not only about understanding others but also a deep recognition of personal responsibility. If an individual does not hold themselves to high standards in the smallest matters, it will not only hinder their personal development but may also have a devastating impact on the collective goals. Consider how a member of a team, by overlooking a detail, can cause the efforts of the entire group to fail. Such examples are not rare in history. The Enlushan rebellion in the Tang dynasty was partly due to overlooked details in border defense, and the defeat at the Battle of Tumu Fortress in the Ming dynasty was a result of small errors in troop deployment. Even more importantly, the teachings of careful attention to details and being cautious in solitude are not merely about personal cultivation, they reflect ancient philosophers' deep reflections on the relationship between the individual and society. In traditional Chinese culture, the small self and the great self are not opposing forces but complementary. One's actions in small matters often have a profound connection to the larger society. The doctrine of the mean states: cultivate oneself, regulate the family, govern the state, and bring peace to the world. Personal cultivation is the foundation of social harmony, and attention to details is the starting point of self-cultivation. By focusing on the details and carefully considering every small choice, we are not only shaping our own virtue but also contributing to the overall harmony of society. This idea is further elaborated in the teachings of Zhuangzi. He believed that when a person is able to maintain clarity in the smallest details, they can achieve a natural harmony with the universe without forceful action. This harmony is not achieved instantly but is the result of continuous practice of attentiveness to details. Just as a stream finds its natural path through each subtle turn, an individual's cultivation must also be refined through attention to every detail. Therefore, a small error can lead to a huge disaster is a reminder to focus on the details, but also to deeply understand how a lack of caution in small matters can impact both the individual and the collective. It encourages us to adopt careful attention to details and caution in solitude as daily principles, starting with small things and moving from the minute to the larger picture. Through this cultivation, we not only improve ourselves but also become a reliable cornerstone for our communities and society, contributing an essential force to the overall harmony. In the vast ocean of ancient philosophy, the concept of self-reflection serves as a guiding light, illuminating the path forward. Confucius' teaching of 3 reflections upon oneself is a prime example of this philosophy, advocating for daily introspection on one's words and actions to ensure responsibility, fulfill commitments, and maintain loyalty. This process of self-reflection goes beyond mere surface-level contemplation. Its deeper significance lies in using awareness of the smallest details to elevate one's inner cultivation. This idea aligns seamlessly with the principle that a small mistake can lead to a great disaster, highlighting the importance of addressing even the slightest deviations as opportunities for improvement. In the Great Learning, the principle of cultivating oneself, regulating the family, governing the state, and bringing peace to the world elevates the role of self-reflection to a higher level. Cultivating oneself is the foundation, and the key to this cultivation is consistently adjusting and perfecting oneself through attention to the smallest details. Cultivating oneself is not simply about repetitive actions, it involves a continual practice of self-awareness and reflection in everyday life. For example, in our interactions with others, do we consistently maintain humility and respect? When faced with temptation, can we hold firm to our inner principles? These small actions may not lead to immediate perfection, but over time, they define the height of one's character. The concept of seeing the subtle and recognizing the obvious in self-reflection is a vital method for improving one's cultivation. Ancient thinkers believed that details often conceal the root of larger problems, and if we focus on the small things, we can gain a clearer understanding of the bigger picture. For instance, the Great Learning emphasizes, from the emperor to the common people, all must take self-cultivation as the foundation. The way to cultivate oneself is through investigating things to achieve knowledge, which involves deeply understanding the details to grasp the essence of things, thereby improving oneself. This idea is closely related to the saying a small mistake can lead to a great disaster. By identifying and correcting subtle errors, we can prevent larger mistakes in the future. There are numerous examples from history of how self-reflection on details leads to personal growth. One such example is the relationship between the generals Lian Po and Lin Shangru during the Warring States period. When their relationship became strained due to a misunderstanding, Lian Po reflected on his actions and realized Lin's good intentions. In the end, he resolved the conflict by offering a public apology, symbolized by the act of carrying a thorn branch. This wisdom, which stems from reflecting on small details, not only salvaged Lian Po's reputation but also maintained the stability of the state. His reflection teaches us that unresolved conflicts over minor issues, if not addressed promptly, can escalate into serious crises. While modern people may find it difficult to replicate the lifestyles of ancient thinkers, the philosophy behind a small mistake can lead to a great disaster still carries profound relevance today. We often overlook details in our busy, everyday lives, such as whether a casual remark may hurt someone or whether a hasty decision could lead to future risks. If we were to engage in regular self-reflection, focusing on these small actions, our personal growth and decision-making abilities would improve significantly. As the Great Learning states, cultivate oneself to rectify the heart, regulate the family to establish its foundation. Self-reflection and self-adjustment are not only key to personal improvement but also the starting point for family and social harmony. The power of self-reflection lies in its ability to help us see our own shortcomings. Zhuangzi, in his work Free and Easy Wandering, said, "My life is finite, but my knowledge is infinite." The finite nature of human life means that we cannot attend to every detail perfectly, yet reflection offers us a way to identify our weaknesses and continuously improve. When we reflect and address those small errors, we are, in essence, shaping a more resilient self. This gradual improvement, though seemingly slow, is like a small stream that eventually forms a mighty river, ultimately influencing the course of our lives. A small mistake can lead to a great disaster serves as both a warning and an inspiration. It reminds us that when reflecting on our actions, we should not only focus on major events but also pay attention to the small details of daily life. These seemingly insignificant details are, in fact, the foundation of the whole. Every instance of self-reflection and adjustment is a refinement of one's character, a concrete step toward the goal of cultivating oneself, regulating the family, governing the state, and bringing peace to the world. Through awareness in the smallest matters, we not only see our own progress but also experience the enduring power of ancient philosophical wisdom. In ancient philosophy, the concept of mindfulness of the small is not only an attitude toward life but also a practice that requires long-term commitment. It deeply reflects the ancient Chinese understanding of the importance of details, as well as the wisdom of personal growth achieved through the accumulation of small, everyday actions. In Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism, this practice is emphasized as a key aspect of self-cultivation, particularly in the long-term discipline of self-restraint and attention to detail. As it is stated in Xunzi's encouragement to learn, accumulating earth creates a mountain, accumulating water forms a deep abyss where dragons are born. Even the smallest actions, when accumulated over time, can lead to great achievements. The essence of mindfulness of the small lies in focusing on everyday details. Compared to the pursuit of grand achievements, ancient Chinese philosophy places more value on the power of slow and steady progress. Confucius said, "Do not do evil just because it is small, and do not neglect good just because it is small." He emphasized that even the tiniest actions could either become the foundation of one's morality or the cracks that erode it. This perspective stems from Confucianism's deep belief in the idea of accumulating good to build virtue, which suggests that through attention to the small things in life, one gradually accumulates goodness and virtue, ultimately shaping an elevated character. In Taoist thought, mindfulness of the small also holds a significant place. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Jia writes, "A tree that is large enough to embrace is born from a tiny sprout. A tower of 9 stories begins with a pile of earth." Through this metaphor, he reveals that great achievements start with the smallest details. He believed that the development and success of all things depend on laying the groundwork in the details, and once these details are neglected, foundational problems can arise, leading to the collapse of the entire endeavor. Lao Jia's concept of Wu Wei, non-action, also reflects the mindfulness of the small, suggesting that by understanding natural laws and following them closely, one can achieve harmony without force. While Taoism's mindfulness of the small emphasizes going with the flow, Confucianism focuses more on proactive self-discipline. Mencius argued, "The noble person is cautious even in solitude." This caution in solitude is closely related to mindfulness of the small, implying that even when no one is watching, one must still hold oneself to the highest standards in the smallest actions. This view underscores the importance of inner integrity and perseverance. Whether one is truly noble is not determined by public appearance but by how one faces oneself in solitude. Practicing mindfulness of the small is essentially the long-term self-discipline of internalizing behavioral norms until they become part of one's character. The reason mindfulness of the small is seen as a form of cultivation is that it requires not only attention to actions but also constant awareness in thoughts and attitudes. The ancients believed that small matters determine the bigger picture, and that details create perfection. For example, the spring and autumn period statesman Yan Ying governed with diligence and frugality, focusing on every aspect of administration and never overlooking small mistakes. His insistence on attention to detail ensured the long-lasting prosperity and stability of the state of Qi. Yan Ying's example teaches us that mindfulness of the small is not an instant result, but a practice that must be sustained day by day. The principle accumulating earth forms a mountain, accumulating water forms a deep abyss further illustrates the enduring nature and profound impact of cultivating mindfulness of the small. The grandeur of a mountain and the depth of an abyss are both the result of countless tiny accumulations. In other words, details do not exist in isolation, but are part of a larger whole. The habits we develop through small details will ultimately shape our entire character. For instance, if a person can maintain focus and caution in their daily life and work, these attitudes will gradually become part of their inner character, influencing their performance in larger challenges. Cultivating mindfulness of the small also requires patience and perseverance. As the saying goes, a rope saws through wood, water droplets wear away stone. This is not only an observation of nature but also a life lesson. In the process of self-cultivation, consistent effort in the details, much like a rope continually rubbing against wood or water droplets slowly eroding rock, will eventually lead to unexpected achievements. This process requires overcoming laziness and the temptation of shortcuts, developing the habit of being responsible for every detail. This habit itself is an essential part of the cultivation of mindfulness of the small. The long-term practice of mindfulness of the small lies in transforming attention to detail into a lifestyle, an inner quality. Through continuous self-restraint and small actions, we not only stabilize and elevate our character but also experience the true power of ancient philosophical wisdom. This power is like a trickling stream, small at first, but ultimately capable of shaping a life with far-reaching depth and breadth. Cultivating a mindful attention to detail is a profound lesson left to us by ancient philosophy. This cultivation is not merely an attitude but a mindset that views the smallest details as the path toward overall perfection. The saying "a small deviation leads to a great error" is a succinct summary of this idea. It warns us that even the slightest mistake can have disastrous consequences, while conversely, paying attention to detail can lay a strong foundation for the stability of one's character. Ancient scholars understood the importance of such meticulousness. Confucius once said, "Pay attention to the end and reflect on the past, and the people's virtues will return to their fullness." While the literal meaning encourages respect for ancestors, the deeper message is a call to pay extreme attention to the details of one's actions. Confucius believed that through careful observation and handling of these small things, society could be guided toward greater virtue. This mindful attention to detail approach not only applies to governance but also to personal development. In the context of "a small deviation leads to a great error," the power of details is seen as key to shaping one's fate. For example, the Liji, Book of Rites, says, "One word can build a nation, one word can destroy a nation." This refers not only to the power of words but to how the smallest choices in speech can have a significant impact. Similarly, this applies to personal development. The smallest habits and decisions, when practiced over time, can profoundly influence one's character and destiny. Mindful attention to detail is a long-term investment in life. The ancients believed that the accumulation of details is not an overnight process but a lifelong commitment. For example, when Confucius mentions the noble person being cautious in their smallest actions, he is calling for a long-term cultivation of this mindset. By maintaining strict standards in daily life, one gradually refines their character and, over time, becomes more stable and mature in the face of complex situations. This meticulous approach is also reflected in ancient scholarly practices. Chinese scholars were deeply focused on details in their academic pursuits, as exemplified by Sima Qian, the author of the Records of the Grand Historian. He not only documented major events but also carefully recorded the smallest details, such as personal dialogues and internal thoughts. This attention to detail made the Records of the Grand Historian not only a historical record but also a model for scholars to follow in cultivating a meticulous scholarly attitude. The spirit of mindful attention to detail shines not only in academic pursuits but also in everyday life. In Zhuangzi's story of the butcher Ding, the skill of the butcher is not just a demonstration of technique but of years of practice, where every cut is made with careful observation and accumulated experience. Zhuangzi uses this story to teach us that cultivation is an art that integrates with life. Only by paying attention to every small detail can we reach a state where actions flow effortlessly and naturally. Moreover, "a small deviation leads to a great error" reminds us that neglecting details can lead to flaws in character or failure in action. For example, Zhao Kuo, a general during the Warring States period, may have failed to grasp the importance of small, real-world military experiences and an understanding of human psychology. This led to his catastrophic defeat in the Battle of Chongping. On the other hand, Bei Qi, another general from the same period, became a celebrated figure due to his mastery of strategic details and careful planning. The contrast between their attention to detail, or lack thereof, highlights the difference between meticulousness and carelessness. Long-term perseverance is key to achieving a stable and perfected character. Mindful attention to detail may appear as silent persistence, but it is precisely this consistency that builds the depth of character and the strength of action. As the doctrine of the mean states, "Be cautious from the beginning and respectful at the end, and all will be well." By focusing on and committing to the smallest details, we transform our internal cultivation into external action, ultimately forming a character that is substantial and impactful. Mindful attention to detail is a journey that begins with the smallest steps but leads to far-reaching consequences. It requires us to approach every aspect of life with a careful and nuanced perspective. Through sustained attention and refinement of the details, we not only develop ourselves but also touch higher philosophical realms. This state is not distant or unattainable but resides in each instance of our meticulous practice. The cultivation of virtue through attention to detail is a core theme emphasized in ancient philosophy. This cultivation is not merely about adhering to superficial behavioral norms, it involves refining one's character and perfecting one's personality through a strict focus on the details, ultimately internalizing morality as part of one's life. Closely related to this is the concept of self-discipline and solitude, which is a concentrated embodiment of this practice. This principle refers to maintaining a high level of self-discipline even when no one is watching, ensuring that one's actions are not influenced by external circumstances. It emphasizes internal resolve rather than external constraints. The power of self-discipline in solitude comes from its deep insight into human nature. As Mencius said, "A gentleman is cautious in his solitude." This thought reveals the most important aspect of human nature, those details that others overlook and only we are aware of. These seemingly insignificant details, like undercurrents in the deep sea, can determine the direction of one's life. By cultivating virtue in these fine points, a person can gradually establish an internal sense of order, preventing their character from being swayed by external factors. Ancient philosophers deeply understood the importance of detail. For example, in the Great Learning, it is stated, "To sincerely focus one's mind is to not deceive oneself." This captures the core spirit of self-discipline and solitude, being honest with oneself deep within. Many seemingly trivial actions are subtly shaping our character. A single moment of disregarding proper conduct, or a casual choice made in laziness, may not seem significant at the time, but over time, it can erode the integrity of one's character. In contrast, by exercising control over the details, people can continuously strengthen their will and accumulate virtues. Cultivating virtue through attention to detail also involves the practical application of attention to small matters. In traditional Chinese culture, details are often seen as the touchstone of virtue. For example, in the classic of filial piety, it says, "Filial piety begins with serving one's parents, continues with serving the ruler, and ends with establishing oneself." Filial piety seems like a grand concept, but its manifestation depends on handling details, such as showing respect in one's words and actions, being thoughtful in daily routines, and maintaining integrity in interactions. These details are not only expressions of behavior but reflections of one's inner virtue. Through daily refinement of these details, a person can unconsciously solidify their virtue. The cultivation of virtue through detail is not an overnight achievement, it requires long-term perseverance and accumulation. As stated in the Doctrine of the Mean, the way cannot be abandoned for even a moment. If it can be abandoned, it is not the way. Virtue must be integrated into daily life and become a habitual behavior. Through continuous practice, details will eventually transform into an instinctive form of morality, allowing virtue to naturally express itself, rather than being forced. For example, ancient scholars often cultivated virtue by adhering strictly to rituals. Confucius in the Analects mentioned, "Do not look at what is improper, do not listen to what is improper, do not speak what is improper, do not act inappropriately." This principle of the four prohibitions may seem like a behavioral norm, but in reality, it is a process of cultivating internal virtue through restraint in the details. Even when there is no one around to supervise, those who are truly cultivated will still uphold proper conduct because they understand that rituals are not just external actions but an outward manifestation of one's inner character. Through the cultivation of virtue in detail, one can also achieve personal integrity. It is like mending a beautiful piece of tapestry, every tiny stitch matters. The ancients often said, "A 1,000-mile dike can collapse due to an ant hole," reminding us that any crack in our virtue can lead to the collapse of our entire character. Only through constant vigilance and cultivation in the details can we prevent such a collapse and maintain harmony and stability in our personality. It is important to note that the cultivation of virtue through detail does not imply harshness or negativity. It does not mean being overly fixated on small matters, but rather using attention to detail to develop sensitivity and insight into the bigger picture. As Zhuangzi said, "The way is in everything," meaning that wisdom is present in all things. By cultivating virtue in the details, people can not only improve themselves but also discover deeper meanings in everyday life, achieving spiritual growth. The ultimate goal of cultivating virtue through attention to detail is to make this practice a natural habit. When such cultivation penetrates every aspect of daily life, it simplifies the complex moral guidelines into internal principles. Through this practice, we not only shape a better version of ourselves but also lay the foundation for societal harmony, making attention to detail a bridge between the individual and the world. Through a deeper exploration of the saying a hair's breadth off, 1,000 miles wrong, we gradually reveal the ancient philosophical concept of attentiveness to small matters and how it helps us shape a life with more depth and self-reflection. In this process, we see that details are not only a reflection of external actions but also an important channel for internal moral cultivation and personality development. The practice of paying attention to small matters is not just about adhering to behavioral norms, it is a form of self-restraint for the soul, a meticulous self-awareness. Ancient thinkers, through ideas like self-discipline in solitude and knowing the small to see the big, remind us to pay attention to every small choice and action in daily life. These seemingly insignificant details ultimately shape a person's character and destiny. Ancient philosophical ideas are not distant or outdated, they still have great practical relevance today. In modern society, we are often surrounded by the fast pace of change and the complexity of daily affairs. However, it is precisely in such an environment that we should learn to start with the small things and cultivate self-discipline and self-reflection. When faced with pressure and temptation, maintaining self-restraint and sensitivity to the finer details helps us find inner balance in an unstable world. Whether in personal growth or societal harmony, this ability to draw wisdom from the smallest things is essential. By practicing attentiveness to small matters, we not only improve our own cultivation but also, in a subtle way, change the world around us. As the great learning teaches, investigate things, extend knowledge, be sincere, rectify the mind, cultivate oneself, regulate the family, govern the country, and bring peace to the world. All of this begins with details, with small changes. Through day-by-day accumulation, the way of attentiveness to small matters flows like a gentle stream, eventually merging into the vast river of our lives, guiding us toward a higher realm. If you've already realized the importance of details in life and are ready to integrate the wisdom of a hair's breadth off, 1,000 miles wrong into your life, don't close this video. This share is specifically for those eager to improve themselves and pursue higher life goals. By practicing self-discipline and reflection in the small things, you will gradually shape a more resolute and wise version of yourself. Let's walk further and more steadily on this road of challenges and growth together. Before you begin applying these thoughts, be sure to follow this channel, subscribe, and share this video so more people can join us on this journey of exploring the meaning of life and self-improvement. We'll meet again next time, and I hope you can witness your growth in the details and gain greater strength from every small choice you make.